नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. So we will start discussing. We have been discussing uh, from the fifth verse of Manasiksha. Uh, so last week we started the fifth verse. So we will chant the verse once and then uh, we will we will do a brief recap of what we saw last time. So here we will chant the verse. असचेष्टा कष्टप्रदविकटपाशालिभिरिह प्रकामं कामादि प्रकटपतपाति व्यतिकरैः गले बद्ध्वा हन्येऽहमिति बकबिद्वर्त्मपगणे कुरु त्वं फुत्कारानवति स यतात्मा मनयिता. So here Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, this is the second verse where he is talking about the next level of obstacles that a sadhaka faces. These are little more subtler ones. So once he overcomes the prajalpa and muktikata and attachment to worshipping other forms of the Lord, then the next set of problem he faces. I mean, of course, not that he prior to this he did not have those series of problems, but then iha prakata patapati, in this revealed path of devotion, the path which our acharyas have revealed. So he says that vyatikaraihi. Vyatikaraihi means there are highway robbers. So they are called as Vyatikaraihi. I have been attacked by the gang of highway robbers. Who are the highway robbers? He says, Prakamam Kamadi, my own lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, pride. They are compared to the highway robbers, right? And then what they are doing? Gale Badwa. They are binding my neck. So how are they binding my neck? He says, Kashta Prada Vikata Pashalibir. So they are binding my neck using these troublesome, dreadful ropes. So what are these troublesome, dreadful ropes? He says, Asat Cheshta, activities which are inspired by lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. They are compared to the ropes. So what is the solution? He says, Hanyeham, I am being killed, I am being killed. Iti kurutvam futkaran. Please cry out piteously like this. To whom? Bakabid Vartma Pagane. You know, to Baka is Bakasur, Bid is the destroyer of Bakasur, Vartma is the path, Bakabid Vartma is the path towards Krishna. Vartmapa means those who are protectors of that path. Gane means there are a group of them, there is not just one person. So he says, Bakabid Vartmapagane Kurutvam Futkaran. Cry out piteously to the protectors of the path of Krishna, right? So avati sa yatatvam manayita. So he says that so that they will come and save you from these enemies. So we saw this. So the path is compared to, so this is a whole metaphorical presentation, right? So he says that the path is the path of devotion, and the traveler on this path is the sadhaka. The highway robbers are the lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. Neck is one's devotional progress, and the act of binding the neck is actually what it means is choking our devotional progress. And what are the ropes that choke our devotional progress? He says, wicked deeds which are inspired by lust, anger, envy, greed, etc. They choke our devotional progress. And what is this crying out piteously? He says, crying out piteously means seeking help. And what is the meaning of hanyeham? Hanyeham, I am dead, I am dead, means my spiritual life is getting finished. That's what it means. And the protectors of the path are the devotees. Bakabid Vartma Pagane refers to the devotees. So this is the whole metaphorical presentation here. So we saw in this context that how we have reached this fifth verse. In the first verse, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami explains, if you want to establish a relationship with Krishna, what you should do. So Raghunath Das Goswami says, if you want to establish a relationship with Krishna, then you should establish an intense and unprecedented relationship with those things, places, people who are connected with Krishna. Who are they? Guru, the Shiksha Guru and the Diksha Guru, Goshte, Vrindavan, Goshtalayan, the Vrajavasis, Sujane, the other Vaishnavas, Bhusuragane, the Brahmanas, Swamantre, one's own Gayatri Mantra, Shri Namni, the holy name, Vraja Navayuvad Dvandva Sharane, and the process of surrendering to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. So if you establish an intense and unprecedented relationship with these 8, then you can establish a relationship with Krishna. But what are the obstacles in establishing this relationship? The obstacles are our material upadhis, our material designations that we carry into our devotional practices, which is described here as dambam. Sada dambam hitva. We saw the word sada means destruction of these anarthas or this material upadhis. It is a constant process. It is not that you do it once and it is gone. It is not like, throwing out some garbage and the garbage is gone from the house. It's not like that. So it's a constant minute by minute process. Constantly keep giving up these material upadhis, right? So then in the next verse we saw that he talks about he talks about 3 types of changes that a sadhaka has to do. 3 changes expected from a sadhaka. What are those 3 changes? He says, first is change of value system. Okay. So first, if you are a very dharmic person, thinking in terms of this is dharma, I should do it, this is adharma, I should not do it. Or if you are a materialistic person, thinking in terms of I like it, so I will do it, I don't like it, I will not do it. He says, come to the platform of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjanam, accepting whatever is favorable for one's progress in bhakti and rejecting whatever is unfavorable for one's progress. So this is the first. The importance of worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in one's progress on the path of bhakti. In our endeavor to establish a relationship with Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, what is the role of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? How he establishes how it is absolutely non-negotiable aspect worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In fact, it is only through worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one can understand and establish a relationship with Radha and Krishna. And the third thing that he mentions is the role of Guru. How is it relevant in our endeavor to establish a relationship with Krishna? He says, Mukunda Preshtatve. The Guru, start seeing the Guru as the dearmost associate of Radha and Krishna. Okay. So therefore, it is only through worshipping the Guru, only through establishing a strong relationship with the Guru, that we are going to get our connection to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Radha and Krishna. So therefore, that is also absolutely non-negotiable. Now, in the third verse, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami addressed this aspect of, can I achieve a relationship with Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan through any other sampradaya? Or is the path narrow, or is the path very broad? So Raghunath Das Goswami is asking, is your goal very narrow, or is your goal very broad? So you say, why don't you just want to establish a relationship with any form of the Lord? If you want to establish a relationship with any form of the Lord, your road is very broad. If you want to establish a relationship with a very specific form of the Lord, in a very specific mood of the Vrajavasis of Vrindavan, then why do you expect the path to be very broad? If your goal is broad, the path to attain it is broad. If your goal is narrow, then the means of attaining that goal is also very narrow. So he says that if you are very clear that I want the goal of my life is to establish a relationship with Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, in the mood of the Vrajavasis, the same mood the Vrajavasis worship Krishna, I want to worship in the same mood. If your goal is so specific, then it is possible only through the sampradaya which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to establish, which is Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So the answer to the question, is it possible to achieve a relationship with Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan through any other sampradaya? The answer that he says is very simple. No, it is not possible. The only means is through the literatures of the Goswamis. Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasyagrajamapi Sputam Premna Nityam Smaranama Tadatvam Shrunumana. So in this verse, the essential theme that he presents is the importance of chastity to our own sampradaya, how important it is to remain chaste to the writings of our own acharyas, not unnecessarily searching for in other writings. So that is described in the third verse. Then from the fourth verse onwards, he starts elaborating what he very briefly mentioned in the first verse, which is Sada Dambam Hitva. So 4 verses talks about how to give up material designations and anarthas gradually. So he starts in the 4th verse by giving up of the grossest of the anarthas, which he says is asadvarta, which is prajalpa, or all the other activities which enhance our material thirst, which is Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha shadbir bhaktir vinashyati. Or the second aspect he mentions is muktikata, and the third thing that he mentions is Lakshmi Patiratim. Even attachment to any other form of the Lord is an obstacle. So what I should do? He says, Vraje Radha Krishnau Swarati Manidau Tvam Bhajamana. My dear mind, please worship the forms of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, and if you worship them, they will give the most valuable jewel of attachment to their own lotus feet as a result of your worshipping them. Right? So this is what we saw in the first 4 verses, and then from the 5th verse onwards, he started discussing about the still more subtler obstacles, which are anarthas in the form of lust anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. The Shadripu, the 6 kinds of enemies, which are compared to highway robbers and who are binding the neck of the sadhaka with the troublesome, dreadful ropes of the wicked deeds, which are inspired by these lust, anger, envy, greed, etc. And the solution is to cry out piteous Krishna, and they are compared to the policemen who can come and save us from these enemies, right? So this is then we started discussing the first aspect of this section, which is Kamadi Prakatapatapati Vyatikaraihi, lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, pride, which are compared to the gang of plunderers on the open road. Okay, so here he says that lust, anger, greed, illusion, false pride, and envy are plunderers on the open road of one's spiritual life. These 6 muggers attack their victims forcefully upon meeting together. So when we come in touch with them, they attack us forcefully, right? So then that in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a clear explanation is given on this subject matter. So we discussed this 2 verses. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्तेषुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधो विजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहात् सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमा स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So we discussed this why. So this whole series of fall down, how it happens. So the point is, why is this person meditating on the sense objects? Because sense control is possible only to a surrendered soul. Yukta asita matpara vashehi yasyendriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. So talking about the sthita pragya, Krishna very mind on me. So therefore he says that how gradually, if one's mind is not surrendered to Krishna, if one's mind is not connected to Krishna, then what happens to such a person? The gradual fall down of such a person is described in these 2 verses, 2.62 and 2.63. So we discussed this, that how dhyayato means meditation. So when he starts meditating on the sense object, gradually it leads to the second stage, which is called as sangha. Sangha means attachment. Object is likable, this is good, and then it leads to kama. Kama means material desire, I want it. So then kama, when fulfilled, leads to lobha, I want more. And when frustrated, it leads to krodha, I will kill that person, or I hate that person who stopped me from achieving it. So these are more extreme emotions. So these are more extreme emotions. So this is like more absorbing. Okay. So this great material absorption leads to sammoha. Sammoha means loss of discrimination as to what is right and what is wrong. So this is sammoha, right? So loss of discrimination. Then loss of discrimination leads to what is the next stage, which is called as smriti vibhrama. So smriti vibhrama means loss of memory of all his plans to overcome sense gratification. So whatever he had planned, okay, I will do this, I'll do this, I will do this, all those plans go for a toss. He forgets them. He forgets those plans. Then the next stage is called as buddhi nasha. Buddhi nasha means loss of determination to pursue one's spiritual life. So that determination is lost. And eventually, the fourth thing is pranashyati. He, he indulges in activities which would perpetrate his stay in this material world. So, as we saw, that these stages describe about how gradually mind is gaining control and intelligence is losing the battle. If you see, loss of discrimination, memory, determination, all three are functions of intelligence, right? All three are functions of intelligence. Discrimination is a function of intelligence, memory is a function of intelligence, determination is a function of intelligence. So gradually, actually, if you see, I will just add one more slide here just to make this point. So here, if you see, okay, my slide is, there is, just hold on for 1 second, something wrong with my PowerPoint is not responding. So I just wanted to discuss on this particular theme in little more detail, but somehow, okay, yeah. So here, if you see, in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, in talking about lust, he establishes a particular hierarchy. He says, Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhya param manah manasastu parabuddhir yo buddhehe paratastu saha. Right? So he says, I mean, I'm not very sure if I discussed this or not. No. Oh yeah, we did discuss. Yeah, we did discuss this. Okay. Maybe when I come there, I will discuss this. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had discussed this somewhere else. Okay, so if you see this, actually the intelligence is supposed to control the mind, because the intelligence is constitutionally source of because of material absorption, mind gains more control. So how this happens, we saw. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan has explained the meaning of these two verses. Even for those who have controlled the senses, if they do not direct their minds to me, it is inevitable that calamities will again arise. This is what Baldev Vidyabhushan says. So he says, most importantly, if they do not direct, most importantly, directing mind to Krishna. So if mind is not directed to Krishna, then all our attempts for sense control will be futile. That's what he wants to say. So then we just that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that there are three residing places of lust: mana and buddhi. Senses, mind, and intelligence are the residing places of lust. But how do we, where to start with? He says, Tasmatvam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshava. You should start with regulating the senses, Krishna says. So start with regulating the senses means give Krishna conscious engagement to the senses. So this is what he is indicating here. So if you see from the third chapter, so this is the third chapter hierarchy. Ani paranyahu indriyabhya param manah manasastu parabuddhir yo buddhe paratastu saha. That the senses are more powerful than the sense objects, mind is more powerful than the senses, intelligence is more powerful than the mind, and the soul is more powerful than the intelligence. But in the second chapter, Krishna says that what is that verse? That Vayurnavam Ivambasi. So even if one of the senses which is which focuses on the sense objects pulls the mind, mind pulls the intelligence, and this is like that. There is a discussion there. There is a description like that. So yeah, Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavam ivambasi. Indriyanam hi charatam, even one of the wandering senses, if it gets attracted to one of the sense objects, whether it is form or sound or the sense of touch or smell or taste, whatever it is, then it pulls the mind, mind pulls the intelligence, and intelligence pulls the soul, right? So it says, so one hierarchy is the sense object is the least, senses are more powerful than the sense objects, mind is more powerful than the senses, and intelligence is more powerful than the mind, and the soul is most powerful. This is one hierarchy, and the opposite hierarchy is also there, right? The sense objects are so powerful, they pull the senses pull the mind, mind pulls the intelligence, intelligence pulls down the soul. So we saw that the first hierarchy is for the self-realized people, but the opposite hierarchy is for materialistic people. So so for materialistic people, it is a very static hierarchy. Always the sense objects control the mind, senses control the mind, mind controls the intelligence, and intelligence controls the soul. And for self-realized people also, it is a static hierarchy where the sense objects, the soul controls the intelligence, intelligence guides the mind, mind guides the senses, senses guide the sense objects, like that. But for sadhakas, we saw that this is a dynamic equilibrium, because sadhakas, they have two kinds of stimuli. The first stimulus is the stimulus of faith. We sometimes respond to our value system, and sometimes we respond to our vasanas, which means sometimes we act on the platform of this is right, I will do it, this is wrong, I will not do it. And sometimes we act on the platform of, oh, I like it, I will do it, I don't like it, I will not do it, right? So therefore, when we act on the platform of right and wrong, then we are following this hierarchy. And when we are acting on the platform of likes and dislikes, then we are acting on this opposite hierarchy. So therefore, there is this constant tug of war that keeps going on. And gradually, when one progresses more and more, when one's anarthas go down and when anartha nivritti is accomplished, we get more and more strength to act on the stimulus of our faith, and the vasanas become weaker and weaker, right? So so therefore, Krishna says here, tasmat tvam indriyani adau niyamya bharatarshava. So start with regulating the senses, he says, right? So I will just hold on. Yeah. So here Krishna says start by regulating the senses. So, so what does it mean to regulate the senses? Right? I think we did discuss this last time. So regulating the senses means giving them Krishna conscious engagement. Right? So by giving them Krishna conscious engagement, you can how does it control the how does it help the mind? Because the food for mind are the vasanas, right? And vasanas are accumulated through sensory actions. Okay, so vasanas are accumulated through sensory actions. So when you, so and then the mind goes and sits on them, and it keeps on meditating on them. So that is the nature of mind. So mind gets the food from the senses, right? So actually mind has the potential to control the senses, but for that uh, the mind has to be primed up. Like, say for example, I mean, for those of you who have had this experience of using a hand pump, hmm, so if you would have seen, if you have not used the hand pump for a long time, then actually the air pockets, you get air pockets in the pipes. So how much ever you may use the handle, you may pump it, water will not come. So therefore the only solution for that is that you have to remove the air pockets, and the means of removing the air pockets is you have to pour pour water inside um, water inside the pump, right? So uh, in one sense pump is supposed to give you water, right? So pump is supposed to give you water, but initially you have to give water to the pump. This is called as priming the pump. So when the pump is primed, then pump can give you water. So but an unprimed pump cannot give you water, right? So the same way mind has the potential to control the senses, but for that the mind has to be primed. Okay, so the means of priming the mind is engage the senses mechanically in Krishna conscious activities. Okay, so if you engage the senses mechanically in Krishna conscious activities, gradually mind will get no other uh, uh, no other impetus. It will not get any other material vasanas. Hmm. So, and the nature of the mind, by doing so the nature of the mind, if you have observed, is that first thing uh, is that it mostly absorbs itself in fresh impressions, right? So this is one of the very prime nature of mind. So whatever uh, fresh impressions are there, mind will go and sit there. So the whatever recently someone spoke, whatever recently you ate, whatever the forms that you recently saw, even though mind has the potential of pulling out very deep rooted impressions also, that which happened many years back, but generally it mostly hovers around the recent happenings in its life, only recent things. Okay, and the so the and the second nature of mind is that it will um, be satisfied, it will seek satisfaction. with whatever you provide. Okay, this is the nature of mind. So we have an advantage with this, right? So understanding this nature of mind, if the mind absorbs itself in only the fresh impressions, then by giving Krishna conscious engagement to our senses, then what happens is, um, gradually mind will start thinking only about whatever is available based on what the senses are providing, the vasanas the senses are providing. And because savai manak krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane karo harer mandira marjanadishu shrutim chakara achyuta sat kathodaye mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau tad britya gatra sparushenga sangamam. Like that, when Ambarish Maharaj engaged each one of his senses in Krishna conscious activities. So similarly, the mind will think about whatever is most mm, attractive, uh, whatever is most attractive amongst that, it will keep absorbing on that, right? So it will seek, the nature of the mind is it will seek satisfaction with whatever you provide. I think I shared this before, but nevertheless I will share it. Or I don't know if it was in this forum. Some of you had attended some of my other courses. You might have probably heard this. So just to give you an example about the nature of mind, that how mind will never, you can never discourage the mind from seeking pleasure and satisfaction. Mind is relentless. Hmm. So mind will relentlessly seek pleasure, right? So yeah, so actually, I went to a boarding school, and in that boarding school, uh, because it was uh, uh, military school, so they used to, it was primarily meant as a school for training the students eventually to join the armed forces. So the nature of training was like that, the physical training, the psychological training, it's a lot of sports, games, physical activities, and you know parades and NCC and all that. And for all that you need a very fit body. So there's a lot of non-vegetarian food being fed. And because our school was on the bank of a river, the most easily available meat was fish. So some of you might have this experience that fish actually, of all the meat, fish stinks the most. It really has a horrible smell. So uh, but somehow, even though most people, even those who grew up in a vegetarian household, they actually became non-vegetarians there because of very strong peer pressure. And we had a mess manager who used to every day come and preach to me. I mean, no one in Krishna consciousness has preached to me so much as the mess manager. Every day he would come and tell, yeah, you really want to join the armed forces, you can't just keep eating vegetarian like that. Because for him, he had a practical issue, because there were very very few vegetarians. And so he had to make something separate for them. So it was much more easier for him to make the same menu for everyone. So he used to come and try to convince us, no, no. And many people fell for it, most people changed. But somehow I could not, that I was so staunch, but somehow I could not tolerate the smell at all. Even though i'm I tried, but I could not succeed. My nose was a very strong, what to say, like a filter. It never went past my nose into my mouth. So it was so difficult for me. And the toughest days were when we used to return back from our vacations, summer vacation or winter vacation. We used to get 2 months holidays for our summer vacation and 1 month holiday for our winter vacations. So after going home and eating all kinds of vegetarian food, you know, uh, which was, I grew up in a Sri Vaishnav household, so very pakka homemade prasadam. So after 2 months, when you go there, when you go back to school, um, the first day when you used to go to the mess, from almost like a few 100 meters before you reach the mess, the smell of that fish was very strong. You could feel the smell of that fish smell, and you are not used to it. I mean, at least 2 months you have changed. Your tastes have changed. Everything, your choice, everything has changed. So I mean, you feel like, so it completely removes your appetite. You don't feel like eating. And then you go to the mess, and every single plate, it's not like they had separate plates for vegetarians and separate plates and glasses for non-vegetarians. We used to, it's the same plate, same glass. So the glass and plate used to smell like fish only, a very nauseating smell that you literally feel like crying only. You don't, because you can't eat, you don't want to eat. And uh, uh, and because you have just come back from home, there is still some stock of food items that your mother has sent with you. So you munch it, and this goes on for 1 or 2 days, but after that the stock gets over. So what will you do? So, and gradually, in 1 or 2 days, your nose has gotten used to the smell, right? And you're basically not the nose, your nose is still smelling, but the mind has processed it as not so uh, not so bad. And then after 2 days, when your stomach starts screaming due to hunger, then automatically the mind gets adjusted. TK, it's not that bad after all, like that. And then every Wednesday afternoons and Friday nights, we used to have what is called as ceremonial lunch and ceremonial dinner. So ceremonial lunch means, you have, instead of white rice, you have some pulao, and you have some additional items, some sweet and things like that. But still in the very same plate, which still is stinking like fish, and in the very same glass, which is also stinking like fish. But nothing has changed, just the color of the rice and some 1 or 2 additional items have changed, but still the same plate and same glass. The mess itself is still, 200 meters before, it is still stinking like fish only. Nothing has changed. But then all of a sudden, the mind is yearning for those Wednesday afternoons and Friday nights, for the ceremonial lunch and ceremonial dinner, because very quickly the mind has gotten used to, mind understands that, okay, this is what will be provided for me for the next 6 months or 7 months. I don't have a choice, I have to tolerate this. So the mind gets used to it, and then it starts, okay, what is the best available pleasure within this? They say Wednesday afternoons and Friday nights. So then mind starts imagining, dhyato vishayan pumsam sangasteshu pajayate starts, right? So you start meditating about Wednesday afternoons and Friday nights. When will it come? When will it come? When will it come? Like that. So that is the nature. huh? So the nature of the mind is that whatever you will provide, it will start seeking satisfaction from that. huh? So mind will relentlessly seek pleasure. So that is why Kapiladev says in the third canto, Narakastopi deham vai puman natyaktum ichchati. He says, even in Naraka, a person does not want to give up his body. So I mean, you must have read about the suffering of the living entity in Naraka. Um, in the fifth canto, there is a very elaborate discussion of the various kinds of hells and what kind of suffering the person gets there and all that. But even then, it is mentioned, Kapiladev says in the third canto that the denizens of hell do not want to die. Uh, and he gives an explanation why they do not want to die, because even in hell they have found out some kind of pleasure. What is that pleasure? Between one punishment and the another punishment, the time gap that is there, when they are relieved of that suffering, mind starts yearning for that, and mind sees some promise there. I just have to tolerate for a little more time, and then I will get the pleasure of not experiencing this punishment, like that. And then mind finds hope there, and it will seek satisfaction in that particular gap. So this is the nature of mind. So we don't have to worry that none of the Krishna conscious activities are very as pleasurable as sense gratification. So all I need to do is uh, so we don't have to think like that. So what will happen if all my senses are engaged in only Krishna conscious activities? What will happen? So he says that no, then mind will start searching for some pleasurable pleasure from whatever Krishna conscious activities that you are doing. Maybe, oh, I like cooking more, I like chanting more, I like dancing with the devotees more. Whatever it is, within that, mind will start searching for some more pleasurable activity. So that way, uh, so even in Krishna consciousness, gradually, uh, mind will start seeking pleasure. But the nature of sense gratification is that, uh, uh, chapala sukha, the nature of this material world is whatever object of pleasure, it has very flickering pleasure only. After some time we will become bored. But the nature of Krishna conscious activities is Anandambudhi Vardhanam, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. um, right? It keeps on increasing, right? Anandambudhi Vardhanam. It's first, it is an oceanic pleasure, and that ocean keeps increasing. So that is why you reach the stage of ruchi, where you develop an intense taste for the process. Hmm? So therefore, the key is mechanical devotional service, because we can't wait till we get taste. We can't wait till we get taste, because taste comes only through mechanical engagement first. So taste means mind, mechanical engagement means senses. So when the senses are engaged mechanically, then gradually mind, this is like priming the mind, priming the pump by pouring water, and then gradually mind develops a taste for that, like that. So I think this is where we were discussing in terms of uh, this prakamam kamadi prakatapatipati vetikaraihi, the highway robbers of lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. How lust transforms into greed, and then gradually the mind starts controlling the intelligence and things like that. So we had discussed this. So before we move on to the next theme, that mm, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to discuss. If there are any quick comments, questions, discussions based on what we discussed last week and what we have summarized today, maybe we could take it for a few minutes before we move on to the next theme. Anything that you might want you want to share, or discuss, or if you have any questions, you can please raise your hands. I will unmute you and then we can discuss for a while. Anything? Okay, there is a question in the chat box. Okay, so this verse, the verse says that if you are attacked by the highway robbers, then seek shelter of the devotees of the Lord. It doesn't talk about our own endeavors to counteract the robbers. But in the lecture, you spoke that in order to control the mind, the senses have to be engaged in Krishna conscious activities, although it may be mechanical, which seems like our own endeavor to control the mind. So, how do we understand this? Okay. Okay. So, this is a very important point that you have brought out. Mm, Okay, I will very briefly touch this point because I want to discuss more about this when we come to that stage of come to the section of what does it mean to cry out to the devotees. So mm, uh, that in order to even get the strength to engage our senses constantly in Krishna conscious activities, we need the association of devotees. It is not our own endeavor. So that is why, yes, here I have mentioned that uh, you have to give constant Krishna conscious engagement to the senses, but we all know uh, ekaki amar nahi paye bala harinama sankirtane. So it is not possible to do it alone. We do need the association of devotees to accomplish this. So that is the point. In yeah, in essence, that's what it is. But we are going to discuss little more in detail about this. But we will when I reach that section, I will discuss this little more in detail. Is that okay, Prabhu? Navdeep Chandra Prabhu. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to ask, share? Um, you can please raise your hands or type it in the chat box. I think it might be easier if you just raise your hands and speak it out. Okay. Okay, Madhavi Gopi Mataji, I'm unmuting you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, at the end of the last class, you had mentioned that you will be talking about the association. You said that it is a late and that is why we can't open the topic now.
Yeah, but I don't remember in what context I spoke, Mataji.
Like it was discussed that we say that by association, person will progress and things like that. But I had said that really means external association one may have, but really internally one is taking that association or not.
Mhm.
On that it will depend that really the progress will happen or not. So
Mm,
you said
mm.
yes, that is the thing, but it is 8:59, so we will not be able to discuss.
Yeah, yeah. But I forgot what exactly I wanted to speak. Uh, well, because there must have been a thread of that whole discussion. You have, I am just missing a few pieces of that thread. But anyway, Mataji, I think when we discuss on the theme of crying out for devotees association, I think that aspect will be covered. We will, when we reach there, we will discuss that.
Okay, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so if there are no further discussion points, I think we will move on with our discussion. So the next thing that he says is talks about okay, okay, uh, okay. One point that Venkat Govind Prabhu is mentioning is association makes mechanical devotional service into spontaneous devotional service. Yeah, yeah. Gradually, over a period of time, it's association which gradually transforms mechanical devotional service into spontaneous devotional service. Many times we talk about uh, mechanical devotional service being the main problem. Actually, mechanical devotional service is not the main problem. Uh, mm, uh, Many times we say that our devotional service should not be mechanical. Uh, the main problem is not mechanical devotional service. The main problem is we have a spontaneous taste for sense gratification. Hmm. So there is, mm, I will just add one more. Okay, maybe I will mention it here only. So there is uh, the lowest stage is spontaneous sense gratification, right? So this is what is the default setting of all conditioned souls. We have a spontaneous taste for sense gratification, but as soon as we become devotees, we are aspiring for spontaneous devotional service, right? But you cannot go from spontaneous sense gratification to spontaneous devotional service, because spontaneous, the word spontaneous means it involves mind, right? It involves mind. But the means of bridging, how do you go from spontaneous sense gratification to spontaneous devotional service? The means is mechanical devotional service, right? Mechanical devotional service means engage the senses and prime the mind. Okay, when you keep on engaging the senses in Krishna conscious activities, then the mind is primed with a lot of Krishna conscious impressions. When the mind is filled with Krishna conscious impressions, then it can practice spontaneous devotional service. Otherwise, if the mind is filled with sense gratificatory vasanas, it can do only spontaneous sense gratification and not spontaneous devotional service. So the main problem is not mechanical devotional service. The main problem with us is we don't do mechanical devotional service. Uh, so while we keep on waiting for spontaneous devotional service. So the main problem is that we don't do mechanical devotional service. We just hope that one day my mind should get so much attracted to Krishna consciousness, while allowing our senses to constantly engage in sense gratification, or at least intermittently engage in sense gratification. So in doing that, we are providing fresh sense gratificatory impressions to our mind, which it can go and meditate upon. So as Venkat Govind Prabhu rightly mentioned, so therefore the key for a mechanical devotional service, how do you accomplish mechanical devotional service? The key is association. Because in um, uh, yeah uh, uh, because in association of devotees, uh, when everyone is chanting, when everyone is engaged in service, it gives there is a very strong synergy that happens. And one very nice point Radha Pramod Prabhu has mentioned here, there is a difference between mechanical devotional service and conscious devotional service. Of course, when I say mechanical, I don't mean not conscious. When I am using mechanical in the sense as being the opposite of that which lacks spontaneity, mm, that which lacks spontaneous emotions, as the Vrajavasis and the perfected devotees have spontaneous emotions for Krishna. When I say mechanical devotional service, what I mean is that which lacks spontaneous emotions. So which is possible only when we reach the stage of bhava and prema. But till then, or even ruchi for that matter. So when I say mechanical devotional service, what I mean is engaging the senses even though the mind may rebel, or even though the mind may not cooperate, mind may not get absorbed, but in a very duty bound way, engaging the senses is what I'm calling as devotion, mechanical devotional service. Of course, that mechanical devotional service definitely has to be conscious, uh, because otherwise, why would we? What is the impetus to engage the senses even though the mind is not following? That is because we are conscious of the fact that if I consciously engage my senses, mm, if I consciously engage my senses, uh, then gradually my mind will follow. And this is the goal of my life, to engage my mind and my senses in Krishna conscious activities. So, therefore, mechanical devotional service is the bridge actually. And I clarify, mechanical, by mechanical devotional service I mean uh, man lage ya na lage, huh? Now, whether your mind is attracted or not, but at least engaging the senses in Krishna conscious activities, this will gradually prime the mind, and then we can enter into the realm of spontaneous devotional service, like that. Any comments on this theme before we move on to the next section? Okay, so we will continue then. So the next theme, okay, Gopi Nandini Mataji has raised her hands. Mataji, I am unmuting you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, what is the difference between ritualistic and mechanical then?
Well, one cannot um, ritualistically see. Ritualistic and mechanical, of course it depends on, see, these are not like uh, these are words which give, which you can define the way you want actually. So it all depends on how a person is using these words. uh, when That's why I'm exactly telling mechanical. When I say mechanical, what I mean is, whether the mind is cooperating, whether the mind is relishing or not, understanding that eventually the goal of my life is to establish a relationship with Krishna. For that, I need to engage my senses and mind in Krishna consciousness. Even though the mind is not getting engaged, I will try to engage my senses. So, in that mood, consciously engaging the senses, even though the mind is not cooperating, that is what I am calling as mechanical devotional service. If that is your understanding of ritualistic devotional service, then that's what I mean. Otherwise, purely ritualistically, absolutely not understanding the purpose, one cannot actually engage the senses. It is not possible. It's very difficult actually. One may have some distorted understanding, because of which they may be doing, but absolutely ritualistically seeing mm, no purpose or no benefit, I don't think one can engage one's senses constantly in any activity for that matter.
No, I mean, our forefathers and all, they all did everything ritualistically, mostly.
Well,
So, whether
I
reciting Vishnu
don't know.
Sahasranamam or, whether doing that, whatever activities they did, they didn't have so much of clarity as we are getting now.
Mm.
So, they're doing japa and all those things, but still, they didn't know. Maybe they thought it was liberation or something like that.
Well, we cannot generalize it, because I mean, just to say that all our forefathers did.
No, not all of it. I'm just saying some of
Yeah,
us.
correct. Yeah, different people may have had different these things. Some of them may have had some. Okay, I'm doing it because it pleases my parents. I'm doing it because maybe it's a pious activity. Like that. Different people may have. Uh, so there could have been some kind of laukiki shraddha involved there. Some kind of you can say like. Mm, you can say like generic faith, huh? So laukiki shraddha. So it may not be a faith which is grounded on shastras, but due to some laukiki shraddha they might have done, with a desire to please their parents they could have done, um, or in order to gain some piety they might have done. So so these are all, but otherwise purely ritualistically for no reason, no one will do any activity, because then uh, that 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 defies logic, that defies uh, common observation. No one would do anything for absolutely no reason. So they might not have their performing certain activities may not be inspired by the shastric faith, but it could be inspired by some laukiki shraddha, like that.
So would that also be mechanical, you would say, and they would also get a taste in future, or no?
No, 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 no. See, ours is mechanical, but it is grounded on shastriya shraddha, right? So we do have a live, our mind may not be so much gaining juice, but we have a very live value system. Okay, so basically you are attacking the mind from both sides. You're attacking the mind from the side of the senses by giving it more and more Krishna conscious vasanas, and you're attacking the mind from the side of the intelligence by strengthening our faith through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So the mind from both sides has no choice but to get absorbed. But uh, but for the other people, it is purely a very laukiki shraddha, which is not very strong and which cannot nourish their mind so much. And but still, because at least they are due to that laukiki shraddha, they are engaging their senses in Krishna conscious activities, or any, so it still helps them, because from from sinning and from gaining more and more uh, sinful vasanas or materialistic vasanas, it definitely helps, but it's not very sustainable over a long period of time.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Right. There is another question: if one does chanting mechanical, will it have benefit, will it not be ritual? So this is a question from the chat box. Well, again, as I mentioned that uh, I am defining mechanical in a very specific way, uh, where the mind is not deriving any juice out of that chanting. So should we still continue to chant, or should I wait till the mind develops some juice and then start chanting? So chanting when the mind is not deriving pleasure but still committed to chant our rounds, that is what I am defining as mechanical chanting. Will it have benefit? Definitely. Why not? So is that a ritual when the mind is not gaining any pleasure but still I am chanting because my guru has told, the shastras are telling, the sadhus are telling that it will be beneficial, even though I am not seeing any benefit in future? Definitely this will take me closer to Krishna, so I will chant even though my mind is rebelling, still chanting. Is that ritual? Definitely not. Ritual means where you do not know and you are not bothered about reason why you are doing. So therefore, I am just trying to help you understand that I am defining mechanical devotional service in a very specific way. Mechanical does not mean I am totally not bothered about the thing. Uh, so it's not like that. It's just that the mind is not deriving any pleasure or juice right now, but still I want to do it because the great authorities say that there will be eventual benefit for that purpose, like that. Okay, so uh, we will move ahead to the next theme. So the troublesome dreadful ropes of wicked deeds. Huh? So as we saw, the Uh, Mataji is asking, conscious incompetence. It is then. Okay. Is this conscious incompetence? Okay. I think we discussed this in the while discussing, what is. Uh, Yeah, you can say something like it's like the stage of conscious incompetence, you can say. um, yeah, mostly it would be conscious incompetence, right? Okay, so then he says the troublesome dreadful ropes of wicked deeds. So how do these highway robbers of lust, anger, envy, greed, how do they bind the living entity? He says through the ropes of unholy activities which are inspired by lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. So through that, they bind us, right? So here Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, the six enemies, lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy, have been previously explained. They create wicked deeds that are like a rope that ties up the neck of the living being and which causes pain and fear, right? So so that is what is compared, we already saw. This is just a shabdartha, so or shlokartha. So he is describing what these mean, but we have already seen that, right? So these activities which basically bind us. Bind us means what? What is the meaning of binding? Binding means they make us addicted. Hmm? They make us helplessly addicted. Hmm? So actions impelled by lust, there could be actions impelled by lust because of which we are helplessly addicted, right? Greed, illusion, pride, you know, even though as Arjuna says, ata kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushah, anichan api varshneya balad iva niyojitah, right? Krishna says, Arjuna says, what is it that is pushing me, O Arjuna, O Krishna? Ata kena prayuktoyam, by what is it that I am pushed? Papam charati, to perform sinful activities. Anichanapi, even though I don't want, even though I don't want to be, um, uh, uh, even though I don't want to act in that way. Baladiva niyojitah, but someone, it seems like someone is pushing me with force, with 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 a strong force, right? So binding means this anichan api papam charati, anichan api baladiva niyojitah. Even though I don't want, I will end up doing it. Helpless. So binding means being helplessly addicted to performing actions impelled by lust, anger, envy, etc. We know that we should not be envying this person. He's a devotee, but still helpless. This is what is called as binding. So, yeah, this is verse number 3.36, right? Third chapter, 36th verse. So, even though I don't want to be lusting after this sense object, but I am bound, I'm helplessly addicted. Even though I should not be greedily eating more than what I want, but still I am bound, I am helplessly addicted, right? So, even though I don't want to express my pride in the assembly of devotees, but still I am bound, I am helplessly addicted. So, binding means these six impulses binds a living entity through activities. So, the highway robbers are lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride, and their weapons are activities. So they bind the living entity, they bind the sadhaka through these ropes of activities which are impelled by these 6 emotions of lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. So binding means making someone helplessly addicted. You don't want to perform that activity, but still you end up doing it like that. So that is about the troublesome, dreadful ropes of wicked deeds. Right? Any quick comments before we move on to the next part? Okay, we'll move on to the next theme then. The next part that he talks about is uh, the protectors of the path leading to the killer of the Baka demon. Okay, so the killer of the Baka demon is Krishna. So the protectors of the path are the devotees. So the devotees are the protectors of the path which leads one to Krishna, right? Baka Bid refers to Sri Krishna, the killer of the Baka demon. The demon Baka is the embodiment of duplicitous hypocrisy. Okay. Sri Krishna killed Baka by splitting his beak into 2 pieces. Okay. Vartma indicates following the devotional path which brings about cultivation of love for Krishna. Okay. So basically, they are the protectors of path leading to love for Krishna. Okay. They protect that path. They are the protectors of the path leading to love for Krishna. So, and the suffix pa refers to the Vaishnavas, the devotees of Krishna, who are the protectors and guardians of the devotional path. The conclusion is that one should cry desperately to the Vaishnavas for protection from all unwanted enemies such as lust, anger, greed, and all other anarthas. The merciful Vaishnavas will definitely provide protection upon hearing a living being's cry. For example, one great devotee from southern India, he prays. Okay, before we go to this verse, I just want to uh, discuss this point. So, I want you to share. So, what I want you to share is, what does it mean? Okay, what does it mean to cry for help? Okay, so I want you to share. You can please either raise your hands or type in the chat box, whatever you feel comfortable. So let's start discussing this. First thing, someone says it means opening our heart. Opening our heart. Okay. Okay. Anyone else would like to share something? What does it mean to you? Okay. Someone says helplessly dependent. What does it mean to be helplessly dependent? What does it mean? Says you have no other way. Okay. You have no other way, which means you are convinced that you cannot get help from anywhere else. Okay. Oh, it means being truthful to Vaishnavas. Okay. Okay. Then another thing, seeking help for spiritual progress. Okay. Okay. Then I have to depend on seeking prayers from devotees. Okay. Seeking prayers from devotees. Okay, to realize that we are in trouble and we need help. Okay. Okay. Realize first that we are in trouble. Okay. And we need help. Okay. Okay. What else does it mean to you? All of this is right. But the first thing is, okay, first accepting that we have these anarthas itself is a big challenge. Okay, right? Mm, heard in class how a child calls out to its mother. Fine. All of that is right. Now, my question is, in order to cry, or all the first thing is, you should be comfortable to approach, right? You should be, okay, again, just hold on for a second, just something, some technical glitch. Again, PowerPoint is creating some trouble. I'm sorry. I think all the hard work is gone. The PowerPoint just stopped working. I don't know if it has auto saved or not. I don't know until where it has auto saved. Okay. Okay, I think those things that we wrote, nothing got registered. Okay, unfortunate. We did lot of nice brainstorming, but everything got. Okay, anyway, but let's try to recollect whatever little we can recollect. I think most of you have the good part is that practically all the answers have come in the chat box, and still the chat box is there. So I think we can still. I will just try to add. What does it mean to cry for help? Okay. So some of you said, I will just open the chat box and. Okay. So you said. Hmm, um, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Opening our heart. And you said helplessly dependent. Okay. Then you mentioned to realize that we need help and we are in trouble. To realize that we are in troubled and we need help, right? And then you shared that being truthful before Vaishnavas. Right? Then you also said seeking help for spiritual progress. Then someone said seeking prayers. Okay. Then someone said, okay. Uh, okay. So, but the most important thing is that whom would you go and open your heart to? Whom would you approach and seek help? To which person you would go and be very truthful to, or seek help for spiritual progress, or seeking prayers, whatever it is. But the point is, there has to be, for all this, we should have a loving and trustworthy relationships. uh, Trustworthy relationship, right? For that, we need to invest. Hmm? We need to invest, because you don't feel comfortable approaching for help to anyone. You feel very comfortable to approach for help only that person in which you have invested, right? So we need to invest. And how to invest? Hmm? How to invest, right? Through the 6 exchanges. So in order to cry for help to Vaishnavas, you need to feel comfortable with that Vaishnava to approach him and reveal, like all that you have shared, opening our heart. So when we are in trouble, so this verse means two things, okay, in one sense. So uh, what does it mean to cry? Huh? So what does it mean that Vaishnavas association will help? So what does it mean? Huh? गले बद्ध्वा हन्येहम इति बकविद वर्त्मपगणे कुरुत्वं फुट्कारान् avati sa avati sayata tvam manayita. It says that. So if you shout out, they will come and help you. So what does it mean that they will come and help, right? So first thing is, in it means is, in association we get strength to act appropriately. So what it means is, never stay alone. Hmm. So stay in the association of devotees, and if you stay in the association of devotees, your appropriate behavior is taken care. Hmm. And the second meaning is that, hmm, establish relationship with devotees so that you feel comfortable to approach them. When we are troubled by these highway robbers. Okay. So the main thing is that yes, we have to go and cry, we have to open our heart, we have to speak the truth. But do you think we can go and speak the truth of whatever thoughts that we are getting, whatever troubles that we are having in our heart? Can we go and open it up to any Vaishnava? We won't. Rather, actually, if you see, in reality, in Vaishnava association only, especially, uh, there is a greater chance of uh, hypocrisy actually, because in the outside world, there is no, um, in one sense, there is no value system. You can publicly go out and smoke or do anything, right? Because in one sense, there is no value system. So, but in devotees association, there is a very strong value system. Um, do this, you can do this, this is, you cannot do this, you cannot break this. If you break this, this is a serious offense and things like that. So, and the whole devotee community knows that the value system, this is appropriate activity, this is inappropriate activity. But the fact is, most of us carry our own conditionings into the into devotional service. So all of us practically. And because every person knows that value system, so therefore there is an inherent fear and guilt to open it up to any devotee, because of the fear of being judged. What will this person think about me? He will think that I am a lousy devotee, he will think I am a useless devotee. uh, so that fear of being judged is very strong. So the chance of living a double life is very strong in devotee circle. And this living a double life is very, very unsustainable in the long run. It can lead to very severe psychological issues actually. uh, it is a very strained life. Mm. it's a very it's a very troubled life. For how long we can live like that? So therefore, if you don't want to live like that, then the means of doing that is to establish, uh, to invest in establishing a wonderful relationship with devotees, so that irrespective of um, irrespective of your conditioning, the other person will not judge you. uh, just like your parents or your siblings, they have affection for you irrespective of who you are, whoever you may be, whatever may be your shortcomings. They love you. That kind of relationship, when it is there, then we feel very comfortable opening our heart and sharing our struggles with other people, with those kind of devotees. Then we don't have to uh, live this double life. Otherwise, in one sense, actually, if you see, devotees are most prone to living this double life, especially if there is no investment mm, in establishing that relationship with devotees, where we feel comfortable opening up. it becomes a serious problem actually in the long run. So um, mm, a relationship that sees beyond the conditionings, uh, right? Yesterday there was, I'm, because this is a close group, I'm just sharing it with you. Mm, Yesterday one of my friends, he was sharing with me that mm, uh, that I mean, okay, I hope you will take it in the right sense. He was sharing with me that, Prabhuji, the devotee uh, who brought me to Krishna consciousness. Uh, so he was telling that I literally came to Krishna consciousness because this devotee was so selfless, so wonderful, and he genuinely cared for me. And if not for him, actually I had a very not so pleasant um, experience with the other devotees. But with this one devotee, I had a very powerful experience. He was so selfless, so kind, and I felt very, very comfortable opening up to me, mm, opening up to him, and all that. But over a period of time, Prabhuji, I lost faith in him because uh, I came to know of some of his deep rooted conditionings, which was actually not so good. Actually, he told me that he was um, he was homosexual in nature, something like that. So, but then over a period of time, when he grew up in Krishna consciousness, when he became more mature in Krishna consciousness, he realized that, oh, that was just his weakness, that was just his conditioning. But am I going to dismiss his genuine help in helping me taking a strong foothold uh, on the path of bhakti? Uh, so if his um, why should I hold him against his? Why should I hold him for his conditioning? He genuinely tried to help me. Is that all bogus? He thought like that. And then he said, then he went out. But by then, the whole devotee community had come to know about his conditioning. So they all rejected him in one sense. But this one devotee, he he also had fallen in that category only. Okay, okay, he is fit to be rejected. How can a devotee be like this, like that? But that was his weakness, conditioning, right? So then he reached out to that devotee, and he sort of, how I need to express my gratitude. And then he expressed his gratitude, helped him, and then gave him his association, even though he was his Pat Pradakshak Guru in one sense. So, and then slowly pulled him, and then now um, he is a very, very wonderfully practicing devotee. And he has more or less overcome his uh, you know his his conditionings and his weaknesses. So the point is that uh, generally, because we carry with us this very strong value system, which is very good, we should, but along with that, if we are not careful, we will very quickly develop very strong sense of judgmental attitude also. And when we develop that judgmental attitude, and when we stop giving um, time for the devotees to gradually practice nicely, and on the strength of their practice of devotional service, overcome their conditionings. uh, if we cannot do that, then that becomes a very strong obstacle in our developing a strong relationship with people, because no one wants to reveal to us, because they will sense a very strong sense of judgmentalism in us. When they see that, oh, he's a judgmental person, then no one would want to establish a relationship with us, because then they will not feel very comfortable. Oh, he will judge me. So you have not gained a, good relation. You have not gained a good friend, because there is no one who does not have any conditioning, and they will never feel comfortable opening up to you because they have seen you judge people. So therefore this is actually something that we need to very clearly understand, that the value system that we are receiving is not to become judgmental in seeing and dealing with other people's conditioning. It is just to the value system that we have received is just to understand, you know, what is right and what is wrong in Krishna consciousness. So so therefore uh, uh, therefore we have to be very careful in this particular thing. So therefore, what does it mean to cry for help? To cry for help means actually we should feel comfortable to seek help, uh, which means we should have a loving and trustworthy relationship. We have to invest in it. Only then, otherwise it is all theory. So if we are not willing to invest in these 6 exchanges and try to establish that kind of a relationship with people, then I think it's very difficult. Uh, mm, then this is all theory actually. How can we cry out for help? We will not cry out for help. We will just try to hide what we are going through, because I will be judged. So therefore this is very important. So definitely the value system, the wonderful pure devotional value system that we are receiving is not for judging. It is for mm, understanding that these are all pitfalls, and ourselves try to be careful, but definitely not to judge others. So, uh, so then if we judge others, then no one will open up to us. Then we are not bona fide policemen. What if so we are supposed to act as policemen, but if the victim is fearful of approaching policemen, then then we are doomed. Then what is the solution actually? uh, if the policemen are more fearful, are more fear inducing than the highway robbers themselves, then what is our hope? How are we going to escape the clutches of um, the highway robbers? So therefore we should be very careful that as Vaishnavas, our role is to be policemen on the path of devotional service. So mm, we have to act as in order to be bona fide policemen, we should act in such a way that people feel comfortable approaching us, which means we have to be non-judgmental. Okay, whatever may be your conditioning. Yeah, I mean, I have my own conditioning, you have your own conditioning, but we both are practicing devotional service, which is the best way to overcome these conditionings. So this we have to understand. So this non-judgmentalism, especially on the path of bhakti, is very very critical to establish good relationship with devotees, because we have 100 times more reason to become judgmental towards others. So this is something that I wanted to touch on. This theme of Bakabid Vartmapagane, protectors on the path leading to the killer of the Baka demon. So in this we had discussed, uh, he said Bakabid refers to Sri Krishna, the killer of the Baka demon. The demon Baka is the embodiment of duplicitous hypocrisy, right? So Sri Krishna killed Baka by splitting his beak into 2 pieces. Vartma indicates following the devotional path, which brings about cultivation of love for Krishna. The suffix pa refers to the Vaishnavas, the devotees of Krishna, who are the protectors and guardians of the devotional path. The conclusion is that one should cry desperately to the Vaishnavas for protection from all unwanted enemies such as lust, anger, greed, and all other anarthas. The merciful Vaishnavas will definitely provide protection upon hearing a living being's cries. For example, one great devotee from southern India prays. So what he is going to pray, we will see. But before that, if there are any quick comments, questions, discussions on this theme, you can please raise your hands and share, or type on the chat box, whatever you feel. So yeah, Srinivas Prasad Prabhu, I am unmuting you.
Hare Krishna, Danutnam Prabhuji.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, in this scenario, a question is coming to my mind that when we are going to some devotee or some devotee is coming to us, and then he is in a pain and he's complaining about uh, of any other devotee which he has been hurt.
Mhm.
So how should we behave in that? If we hear, so it's maybe does that mean that we are uh, committing aprad, or when we are hearing the other devotees thing when somebody is describing? So what should be the proper way that so we don't commit aprad and we give a proper solution?
See, first thing is uh, we should be when he is approaching, we should understand that the purpose of approach is that the person is in pain.
Hmm.
So we connect to the pain of that person. So rest is all detail.
Hmm.
So the focus is what? The focus is he is in pain.
Pain.
So as long, so from our point of view, we should try to focus there. He is in pain, so I have to help him. And the focus is not on, what is the cause of pain or analysis of the cause of pain,
Hmm.
which may be a person in this case. So
Hmm.
but the point is the person is in pain, so how I can help. Sometimes uh, just many times people just want to vent out their frustration, that's all. They don't even want a solution. Most kind of situations are like that. They are not expecting a solution from you. They are just suffering due to um, you
They
know
want to show their heart.
yeah, they want to share their heart. And when you allow them to share their heart with you in a very non-judgmental way, that's all.
Hmm.
They are mostly satisfied with that, and they will go away. They are not
Hmm.
looking for a solution. Many times we assume that I have to give a solution for this problem, but mostly it is not a fact actually.
So while that person is sharing his heart, and if he's saying something about some other devotees that he did this, he did that. Mm.
Yeah, I mean that's what we are discussing now, right? Everyone has their own conditioning, but the fact is everyone wants to please Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. But so in a material world, everyone is expected to possess particular kind of conditionings.
Mm.
uh, Otherwise they'll not be in the material world only.
Correct.
So for some people they have very strong conditioning, some people they have not so strong conditionings. But the very fact is that this is material world and you expect conditioned souls only. So
Mm.
what else do you expect? But the fact is, how can we help that person come closer to Krishna
Mm.
despite all these conditionings? That's what we should see.
Mm. Because personally, I feel that whatever is happening with any devotee, it is by the will of the Krishna, and it is basically to make that person come closer to Krishna. But because of his immaturity, or he is not that matlab, uh, able to understand that this is Krishna, he takes it that this devotee told me this. But that devotee also, if he is doing or behaving with that person, that also is for purification of that person. But
Yeah,
to
correct,
analyze
correct.
it in that way, the other person or the other devotee who is not that mature, he does not understand that, and he comes with a complaint. So when we are hearing that, so do we also get indulged in Vaishnava Aparadh by hearing the complaints of some senior
Well,
Vaishnava?
that's what. See, it depends on it depends on what is your mentality.
Mm.
Uh, so it's not about hearing or not hearing.
Mm.
It is about if you think that you will get affected by hearing that, then you don't have to hear. But
Mm.
if you can hear with the soul mood of, oh, here is a person who
In
is
pain.
deeply pained,
Mm.
and you know, he wants to vent out. If
Mm.
I just allow him to vent out to me, he will become free of his pain. So
Mm.
with purely that motive,
Yeah.
if you hear and let it go, I think that
Yeah, I got it.
that's
Yes,
not
I got
offensive.
it. Because ultimately Krishna is seeing the intention.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rohit. Thanks a
You're
lot.
welcome. Thank you. Anything else anyone would like to share before we move on? Okay, so let's see what the great devotee from South India, what he prays. So he says, Prahlada Narada Parashara Pundarika Vyasambarisha Shukashaunaka Bhishma Dalbhyan Rukmangadoddhava Vibhishana Falgunadin Punyan Iman Parama Bhagavatan Namami. He says, to the saintly persons of the Lord, headed by Prahlada, Narada, Parashara, Pundarika, Vyasa, Ambarisha, Shuka, Shaunaka, Bhishma, Dalbhya, Rukmangada, Uddhava, Vibhishana, and Arjuna, I offer my respectful obeisances. So, this uh, is mentioned because you call out for the devotees, cry out for help, like that. So, Shri Sarvagya prays, Tvad Bhaktas Saritam Patim Chulukavat Khadyotavat Bhaskaram Merum Pashyati Loshtravat Kimaparam Bhume Patim Bhrutyavat Chintaratnachayam Sheela Sakalavat Kalpadrumam Kashtavat Samsaram Trinarashivat Kimaparam Deham Nijam Bharavat. So this is from Padyavali, compilation by Srila Rupa Goswami, but written by Sri Sarvagya. O Lord, your devotees see the king of rivers as handful of water. This is like a Vishwam Purna Sukayate Vidhi Mahendradischa Kitayate. Hmm. The sun, a firefly, Mount Meru as a clump of earth, the emperor of the world, a servant, a multitude of Chintamani jewels as simply pebbles, a valuable Kalpavriksha tree, a mere stick, the entire world as a bunch of straw, and his own body a burden only. Hmm? So, which means they don't value anything of this world, but they value the association of devotees, right? That's what he is indicating here through these verses. Sri Madhava Saraswati describes further, Mimamsa Rajasa Malimasadrisham Tavan Nadhir Ishware Garvodarka Kukarkasha Dhyam Durepi Varta Hare Janantopi न जानते श्रुतिमुखम श्रीरंगी संगादृते सुस्वादुम परिवेशयन्त्यपि रसम गुर्वी न दर्वी स्पृशेत. So he says, Mimamsa Rajasa Malimasadrisham. Those whose eyes are blinded by the dust of the Karma Mimamsa philosophy cannot fix their hearts on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those whose intelligence is atrophied by illogical conclusions dictated by pride stay far away from the topics of Lord Hari. Kukarkasha diyam durepi varta harehe. Those who are completely dictated by pride and whose intelligence is completely absorbed in mental speculation, they will not discuss the topics of Lord Hari. Hmm. Those who seem to understand the Vedas but cannot become devotees of Lord Krishna do not actually understand the Vedas. They are like large ladles that distribute the sweetest nectar, but cannot taste it themselves. So all these, um, so therefore he is telling whom should you seek the association of. That's what he is telling. Not the Mimamsakas. Why? Because they cannot fix their hearts on the Supreme Lord. Not the mental speculators, because dictated by pride they stay far away from the topics of Hari. Not those people who are Vedavadaratas, who know how to study the Vedas but they have not become devotees of Lord Krishna. Uh, so all such people, their association is useless, because they are like ladles that distribute the sweet nectar, but they themselves cannot taste it, right? So therefore one should aspire for devotees association. That's what he is indicating here, by mentioning that Bakabid Vartmapagane, uh, approach the disciples, devotees of Krishna, who are the policemen. The glories of the devotees association are explained when Hiranyakashipu speaks to Prahlad about the importance of association in general. Even though this is spoken by Hiranyakashipu, but he is telling Prahlad Maharaj, look, Prahlad Maharaj, what does he say? Yasya yat sangati pumso manivat syat satad gunaihi swakularidhyai tato dhiman swayutaneva samshre. So Hiranyakashipu is telling Prahlad Maharaj, O Prahlad, just as a transparent crystal takes on the colors of a nearby object, manivat, if there is a transparent crystal, if there is a blue object that comes, it will reflect blue color. If an yellow object is put in front of it, it will reflect yellow color, like that. So similarly, the association of a person determines one's qualities. So Hiranyakashipu is telling, look, Prahlad, you are now talking just like these fallen Vaishnavas because you took their association. Maybe you took their association. So you take the good association of these asuras. So then you will start thinking in the right way, just like the asuras, like that he says. Tato dhiman, therefore an intelligent person, swayuta neva samshret, they will take shelter in like-minded, similarly practicing groups. Swakula ridyai, for bringing auspiciousness and prosperity to their own group. So you therefore associate with the most glorious asuras, so that you will bring auspiciousness and prosperity to your group, to the group to which you belong. Don't associate with those people who do not belong to your group, like that he was telling Prahlad Maharaj. But the point is, the essence is that the impurities of the heart cannot be obliterated with yoga or fire sacrifices. Through the association of a Vaishnava who is free from envy, gradually those impurities will be removed. So in this way, we come to the end of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary to this fifth verse of Manasiksha. So before we end today's discussion, if there are any final comments, questions before we wind up for the day, you can please raise your hands or type or whatever. I'll just wait for a few seconds. Anything that you might want to share, you can please raise your hands. Okay. Okay, so we will end our discussion here and continue next Tuesday. So I think probably next Tuesday is our 50th session probably. So what do they call it? Is that golden jubilee or whatever? So it's the 50th session. So you all have been attending for almost a year now, or maybe more. So thank you. So we will continue this discussion next Tuesday, which will be the 50th class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pad ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Shri Manasiksha ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much.